We're back. So the power cut out on us. Apologies to all that who were tuning in. Miss So, hope you come back. Uh, I know we were streaming and then boom. I I thought it would happen. I didn't anticipate on it cutting out so early, but we're back. The power's back on. I jumped right back on. So hopefully we could make it through. I'm hoping we can make it through the list. Let's just cross our fingers. So number 10, we've got Peach Momoko. Um, as I was saying earlier, she was higher on the list. I think I had her as high as like 6 at one time, or maybe 8. She was around 7 or 8. But she's fallen to 10. And hopefully, she stays in my top 10. I have not been picking up many Peach Momoko books as of late. Kind of cooled off on her. I still think she's an amazing artist, and I think her legacy will continue to grow. She's definitely a fan favorite, and why wouldn't she be? So I said a lot of things about this book, about the characters. So go back and watch the previous video before it cut out, and we're just going to move on. This artist, we're going to number 9 now. This artist is new to the list, and he's always been a favorite of mine, but he's never cracked the top 10. But I gained a new appreciation for this artist this year after kind of reading more about his background and just looking through one of his collected art books, just a collection of his artwork at DC. And I was hooked after looking at the stuff he's done for DC over the years, and his approach to comic books. I just was like, wow. Um, yeah. I didn't always love Alex Ross's art style. It's very hyper real, kind of like a painted style as well. Never thought it would like meshed with comic books all that well. I was more kind of like, give me the old school uh, techniques of comic book. But then I just, this is an immensely talented artist, and the fact that he brings this very sort of uh, I guess a real sort of art approach to comic book paneling and covers speaks volumes to just how talented he is. And yeah, this is again, this top 10 list of the artists. It's not necessarily the best work by this artist, but it's definitely a book that's top of mind, one of my favorites in the collection by the artist. And this is one I recently picked up. Beautiful crypto cover here. Just captures the essence of crypto there, the cape, kind of flying in the wind. He's on this lion sculpture, the city backdrop. Just a really fun, cool cover. Yeah, with the little Superman dog collar and everything. That's just really cool. All right, so yeah, Alex Ross is our number 9 artist. Number 8 on our list is just another immensely talented artist. This artist we lost a little too soon. We didn't get a chance to really. I mean, he did a lot of work in comic books while he was still alive. But of course, um, we did lose him rather young, and that artist is Michael Turner. And this is a book I picked up this past summer, and just one of my favorite Supergirl uh, covers or books in the collection. Probably my favorite Supergirl cover, um, and yeah, just this beautiful piece by Michael Turner. Um, get those eyes, just a mesmerizing piece right there. Um, I mean, what more can you say? Just the colors on. So I had the black and white sketch version of this cover, and that's a great book too. I ended up selling it because the condition was a little. It was not all that great. Um, but I always when I sold it, it was sold with the intention of picking up this version, the colored version. Um, and we were able to do that this summer. And I really like the colored version so much better. Just so much. Uh, it's better to look at overall. Nothing wrong with the sketch cover. The sketch cover is great too, but I think all the the brilliant colors on this just really bring out the beauty of this piece. So absolute favorite. That's our number 8 artist there. Number 7 on the list. Number 7 on the list is now there are a lot of great covers by this artist, but I just focused on this one because it's a signed copy. It's a key book. It's one of those rare um, collaborations between two of my favorite artists, and that is Death Made Black. This is the first appearance of Gen 13. It's a signed copy there, beautiful Mark Silvestri signature. Yeah, there you go, there. And yeah, this is a pretty cool crossover, Image and Valiant crossover. Really highly anticipated, but didn't deliver. That's kind of like the '90s books in a lot of ways. And just a lot of like marketing and hype and cool art, but when it came down to like executing and putting out quality, I just felt like Image um, and the whole little collective of studios there did did drop the ball. Um, I think it's just a culture. It was a you had DC, you had Marvel, you had these established characters, a system built at these publishing companies that have been around, for decades versus what's essentially a couple of startups where they're bringing in almost like, you know, they're talented artists, but not a lot of experience. Even the guys who started Image and Image and the different varying studios, you could make the argument that they didn't have the experience to really drive uh, innovation and build, build off of like just build uh, established characters, established stories, right? Things that will make a mark. They're just kind of so busy just trying to put out books. They weren't being thoughtful. They weren't looking 10 steps or 20 or even 100 steps ahead to where this story would land and what would be the impact. It was just kind of like, let's just, you know, we'll write this, and they just started running out of ideas and just didn't really add. I mean, they're all great concepts, but when you got to have a good uh, beginning, middle, and end to any great story arc, and they just never bothered on some of the beginning, middles, and ends on anything they worked on. So just goes to show you, like, as much as talented as people are, without really a strategic directive, and without establishing, um, any kind of, I guess, without establishing any branded, characters that appeal to a large, massive audience. It's just you're just never going to get complete buy-in from the fan base, and I just felt like that's kind of where we ended up in the '90s. These books were highly marketed and anticipated and bought, but at the end of the day, like, people would rather read about Daredevil than this team here. So that was one of the flaws, but it was an exciting time because there were a lot of books coming out, a lot of characters, a lot of things to keep up with. It just sometimes didn't pan out. Um, Again, just more thought should have gone into the content. All right, we're now at number 6 on the list. And this is an artist that's, I think, a lot of the artists have kind of just dropped down in a position, and that's only because one artist in particular kind of rose in the ranks, and surpassed a lot of these artists. But yeah, uh, George Perez is still one of my favorite artists of all time. We picked up this very key book here, Tale of the Teen Titans, first appearance in Nightwing, and everything great about George Perez's artwork is on display here. This beautiful cover here with the backgrounds, different characters in the backgrounds, just a lot of um, just what you would call comic book goodness happening on this cover. Yeah, just like got like different panels there in the background. You got 3 great characters in the foreground setting up whatever this story is going to be. There shall come a Titan. Just colors really pop, look well. It's a beautiful book. So yeah, um, we picked this one up for essentially like $2. I mean, it has its issues. It's got a lot of, kind of staining, a little bit of water, humidity exposure, stiffen the book, but it's a low grade book. Presents mid grade, but we got it for, again, like around $2. It's ridiculous. I'll take that any day. All right. Well, this next artist is number 5 on our list, and another one of he's just a legend. He's as big as they come in terms of legends, and he's pretty much, I think, a career artist at Marvel. I don't think he's done some crossover, maybe stuff like DC Marvel crossover stuff, and I'm sure he's done some work. I think there's rumors that he did some, some artwork for Superman. Um, that'd be cool to have as a piece. But the person I'm referring to is John Romita Jr. This is one of my favorite covers by the legend. I said John Romita Jr. I meant John Romita Sr. And John Romita Sr. is, of course, best known for his storied run on the Amazing Spider-Man. Now he wasn't the first artist to do Spider-Man, but he definitely came in and popularized this title, and just really added a lot of depth to both he and Stan Lee. Added just a lot of depth to the character and the story surrounding uh, Peter Parker, the character, that kind of make up what makes this character so interesting, right? And this is one of the biggest turning points in the title. Peter Parker suffers a real traumatic uh, tragedy, and with the death of his girlfriend in this book. And we've seen it kind of play out in Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Always was a favorite of Andrew Garfield over the original uh, Tobey Maguire. Nothing against Tobey Maguire and the Sam Raimi movies, but I just think for me, it's always been Gwen Stacy and that story with Garfield and Emma Emma Thompson Watson. What's her name? No, Emma Watson's the Harry Potter actress. Emma Thompson, right? She's the she plays Gwen Stacy. She plays a perfect Gwen Stacy, I think. Um, but yeah, I mean that we never really got to see the. It ended with her death, um, and then we never got to see. Um, yeah, we never got to see the third film in that trilogy. It was supposed to be a trilogy, I would imagine, but we got two movies where, and the second one she dies, and we never got to see the conclusion. I'm not sure what the explanation was on that, but anyway, this is not the original book. This is a facsimile, and I actually like these facsimiles. They're, you know, just feels like I have the real book here in terms of the visual. But of course, and I can obviously open it up and read it like like the original book, which is pretty cool. I also have this iconic cover as well. First appearance of Punisher. These are both like books I'd like to own someday. I know Punisher right now is a little bit on the unattainable side, but I would imagine hopefully at some point um, after this, you know, Disney Plus series kind of comes and goes, and people lose interest in Daredevil and all these characters around the series wanes, which should be hopefully down the road. A low grade copy is in my future, but man, how awesome would it be to own uh, Romita Senior, the original comic book on any of these titles, whether it's on any of these issues, whether it's 121 or 129, it'd be pretty exciting to have. All right, now we've tracked the top five. That was number five artist. And here is the artist that rose up the ranks. Um, and I can't say enough about this artist's artwork. Um, I mean, he's just immensely talented. Love his style. I wish I had a. There's like a sticker here, kind of marring the visuals here on Superman. But yeah, this is the Wonder Woman 88. It's a DC logo variant of this book. but I just love it's mullet Superman from the '90s with Ballin Wonder Woman. So it's Ballin Superman, Ballin Wonder Woman, and it's very I mean, it's subtly provocative. You don't know the context of why they're in this sort of semi embrace, but they're posing together. She's got her hand in a very sort of I don't know if someone were to kind of touch me there, and they're very physically attractive. It'd be yeah. I think Superman's looking away for a reason. He's trying to maybe distract himself from I don't know what's going on there, but there's a little bit of I don't know maybe Bollins intimating something there. Um, yeah, who knows? There's something going on here, and yeah, um, she's getting a rise out of Superman, basically. Kind of put it that way, I guess. But yeah, this is just there's so many great covers by Ballin in my collection. Um, I really look at like any given uh, whether it's a cover or internal artwork. Um, Anything by Ballin is just so captivating. Case in point, it's just they're just you know boy, their emergency vehicles going crazy outside. I hope everybody's okay. But yeah, everything's just so vivid and captivating, and um, you know, the great thing about Bolland is doesn't really have any backup. This is just all him, and the great ones just can kind of do it all by themselves. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is just Bolland goodness. And I picked up a lot of Bolland goodness, but this is just one of my favorite pieces by him in the collection. Two of my favorite characters as well. But man, I am just in love with Bolland Wonder Woman. Absolutely in love. And it was a large focus of my pickups this year. Even though I had this book um, prior to that, but definitely picked up a lot of Bolland Wonder Woman this past summer. All right, we're down to my top three artists, favorite artists. So number three, we have John Byrne, and John Byrne's another one of those artists where you can just really pick any book, and um, it's just uh, exemplary of his talent, the fact that he put so much thought into these characters. He's obviously a comic book fan. You can tell um, he got into the industry because of his passion for comic books. That's not always the case. Like you take a Peach Momoko, for example. Um, she's had to learn who these characters were. She didn't grow up reading comic books. She got into the industry because she's talented, and then she's had to kind of, you know, take a more studied approach to, you know, these books, these characters, this history, this medium, even like Peach Momoko, this medium, right? But that's not the case for most of these artists. I can't speak for some of the others on this list, but for example, a John Byrne, an Alex Ross, a Jim Lee, comic books have always been a hobby, sort of a distraction. The industry or the hobby itself was the driving force behind uh, getting into the artwork and really honing their craft, right? So, uh, yeah, John Byrne, this cover here, Fantastic Four 236, is just absolute brilliance here. You got so many different characters. And someone told me that like that's supposed to be Jack Kirby, I guess. I don't know. If that's Kirby, that I guess that's what he looked like at around this time. But yeah, you got pretty much the whole entire Marvel, you know, universe here in this cover, which is what makes it great. You got all the X-Men there, you got the Avengers, and then you got, of course, the Fantastic Four, the first family of Marvel. Just a beautiful cover, and he's doing so much here in terms of just generating this image with all the characters, um, the positioning, all the emotions and different poses everybody's in. Just a real showcase of Byrne's talent. And Byrne just made it look so easy. And he's just done it for so long. And he's just another one of those artists that can do it all himself, write books, publish his own comic books with very little help, right? A guy who's very well known for getting work done on time, just he made this he made the work look easy, and he produced a lot of it over the years. So yeah, John Byrne could easily be number one, my top favorite artist, because he definitely was. uh I would say my favorite artist when I first got into comic books. I love, yeah, yeah, I John Byrne was kind of my introduction to comic books, and he remained uh, uh, an artist that I wanted to collect and read, and you know, if he did something, I wanted to buy it, and very fortunate to have been collecting when he was very active, both in Marvel and actually in Marvel he wasn't as active. I got into him when he was more active in on the DC side, but either way, definitely was one of the top artists during my collecting era, and has remained so. Right, he's still um, his work is still. Well, I shouldn't say today he's not doing much, but what I'm saying is like when I go into a comic book shop and I'm looking for stuff to buy, like his stuff is there, right? His stuff has always been there, and for the most part, still obtainable. I guess there's nothing burn related that's crazy out of reach, but yeah, will always be part of the stuff I pick up when I go to a comic book shop. All right, the next two artists are hands down sort of a little sort of a head above the rest in terms of my favorite artists, and they're almost they're almost tied to a certain extent. Um, and Neil Adams, I when I was collecting comic books, I knew of Neil Adams' work. I just was never I never really got into it. I never really read it was just one of those, like, he was just one of those artists, classic artists, uh, whom you knew, like, did great artwork in the past. I just never collected that stuff. I was just more focused on the books that were coming out. I didn't go, collecting back issues and all that. Not that I couldn't. It's just like I didn't really have motivation to do it. I was just more focused on the new stuff that was coming out. So when I got back into comic book collecting, I was definitely focused on like picking up stuff from when I was collecting 90s, 80s stuff. But then um, I also was like more interested in picking up some of the older books, and definitely, you know, Neil Adams' work came into sharp focus with his passing. And yeah, it just sent me on this like kind of mission to collect his artwork and collect you know, his backlog essentially. And this has this is kind of what this is one of the first books I picked up because I love Superman and I love Neil's rendition of Superman. And this is just such a beautiful cover. The character, the pose, the in-flight pose, um, just the character's looks like he's beaming and he's just you know beautiful cover there. The red yellow Action Comics, just everything about this cover here is just iconic. And yeah, this is the kind of stuff that when you look at a Neil Adams work, just makes you like realize how um, the kind of impact he had on comic books. Um, this is like it's a master class in comic book art, in my opinion. Right? This is a master class. Um, when you want to teach people, here's how you make a great comic book cover. Just do what Neil Adams did here. Um, it's kind of simplest. It's a simple cover. It's not anything overly complicated, but it's just it uses all the composition techniques so well. Um, yeah, almost like that's like a photo cover in the background there, and then you just got this his sketch, beautifully inked and beautifully colored there. Just fabulous. So yeah, number two on our second favorite artist. Really, like Jim and Neil, there's so you can there's so many similarities between the two artists. I mean, I could just kind of list them off, but they both worked for Marvel and DC. They both got their start at Marvel, ended up at DC. Um, and actually, no, Neil got his start at DC. Let me take that back. Let me walk that back. Got his start in like Archie Comics, then did a lot of stuff for DC, and then went to Marvel for a period, and then kind of did both, I guess, like both DC and Marvel. And he had a long, storied career. I mean, he was doing comic books right up until he passed. So he has just this huge library of, you know, you want almost what 4 decades worth, 4 or 5 decades worth of no. Yeah, more than that, right? You just got almost like 60 years of comic book. I want to say 50 years, about 50 years worth of comic book. Well, I don't know, close to 60 years of comic book related content from this master. So we're really blessed. Um, but yeah, he did so much critical work at DC on Superman, on Batman. Um, but of course, I have a preference for all the stuff he did on the Superman titles: Superboy, Lois Lane, Action Comics, Superman. Um, you name it, he did it, and I think I know a lot of people attribute his work on Batman, kind of that's his legacy work. I am of the opinion that his legacy work is on Superman. I think a lot of sort of people who follow Neil Adams' work closely would agree. You know, Superman's always been his forte. Um, Nothing against his Batman, nothing against his run on Batman and all that, but yeah, he definitely his Superman is just iconic, absolutely iconic. All right, and number one is no surprise to those of you who follow me. I am uh, self-proclaimed number one fan of Jim Lee, and we're talking about a long legacy in comic books. Someone who's done work in Marvel, done work at DC, and done just a, a large range of uh, characters. I think where Jim separates himself from all of the artists on this list is that he's kind of taken on the mantle now more as somebody who's leading the content, kind of becoming the face of DC, much like Stan did for Marvel, right? Stan was just like, he was larger than life for Marvel. He was his own sort of branded, you know, iconic figure at Marvel. Um, Somebody who wasn't necessarily, who helped build the company, but wasn't necessarily involved in creating stuff, but more like kind of like mm, leading the company, doing a lot of the PR work for the company, but also kind of working with the creators to like maintain that branding and consistency and quality. But yeah, just more of like a PR guy, right? I feel like Jim is more heavily still involved in the creative process on a lot of the books. Like he's gonna be doing a Hush sequel with Jeff Loeb, right? Like that's just getting back down into the basics, the the grunt work. And he's this executive at DC, but he's leading a lot of the business aspect of what DC is. I just felt like in that sense, he's doing a lot of what Stan did for Marvel, even into the later years. Jim's kind of taking on that mantle now, and I think as he gets older and he does less and less on the creative side, um, you'll see kind of that leadership role grow and expand and become a brand in and of itself. And I really hope um, I really hope there's an opportunity for him to maybe make some cameos, right? And because I mean, DC comic book fans would love that if you had just Jim Lee popping up doing that kind of random Stanley thing in the new DC EU films. That would be just like, just be kind of like the passing of the torch from Stan to Jim. Obviously, these are rival companies, but Jim and Stan always had a very good personal relationship, and it'd just be a cool thing to kind of see transition. I just hope people are open to that idea. Like, we've lost Stan. There's no one replacement for Stan. But if we're gonna give somebody a little bit of leeway to um, replace Stan, or who better to um, personify what Stan stood for than somebody like Jim, right? Like, there's just a lot of the similarities with the way their careers have gone. Um, but of course, Stan, he built the company versus Jim, who just, with his talent, helped um, build a legacy at Marvel, build a legacy at Image Comics, and now build this legacy at DC. I mean, that's hard to do. Um, but, for as long as Jim's been in the industry, he's had a huge impact. Um, so I think this book really exemplifies, for me, I think peak creativity in his career, and that's this incredible book. Now, there'll be critics of the Wildcats. There'll be critics, and I was very critical in just showing off that Mark Silvestri cover, right? What was wrong with Image Comics? You had a lot of great artists, um, the top artists in the industry, right? And they eventually did pay and bring on great writers as well. But it's one thing to like pay a writer to say, "Hey, make a story about Wildcats," right? Who are the Wildcats? I don't know. And you just pay a guy like Alan Moore to write something compelling around Wildcats, and he did that. Um, versus, hey, write something compelling about Batman or Joker, right? I mean, those are iconic, established characters, and so you give Alan Moore license to do something around the Joker, he's going to do something absolutely mind blowing, and he understands everything around that. You don't have to pay him to write something brilliant. He's getting paid to already do something he wants to do, versus he's getting paid to do something you're paying him to do around this group of characters. So it's a different dynamic, right? Um, Hence, I think that was a challenge. You had this swell in interest around Image, people buying, picking up these books, thinking they're going to be worse. I was one of them. I would pick up Image titles. These were in the top, always in the top 10 books of the new releases. This was like number one. Number two was number one when it came out. Number three was number one. I mean, it was always in the top, you know, tier of new releases that people wanted. But this book starts out off just so brilliantly. It's like the story, the art, everything in this first issue was just like it hit it out of the park. It was just so good, but it couldn't sustain itself. And the more characters they brought in, the more like cross title like cameos and you know um, the more they integrated other storylines and characters, the more convoluted and the more interest you started to lose in, like, wait, where's the story going? What's happening? It just kind of got to be a little confusing, a little too much going on, too many characters to keep track of. Just it was really a chaotic mess. You go back and read these titles now, and it's just kind of like, all right, I got to buy this book, I got to buy that book, I got to figure out who this team relates to that team, and there's all these like interpersonal relationships between some of these teams and characters. It just got really hard to keep up with, and I think ultimately that doesn't do a lot for building rapport with these characters or these stories, or uh, doesn't build a brand. It doesn't. It just it's a house of cards at the end of the day, and ultimately the sales waned, and it everything that these companies kind of prided and built themselves on just kind of fell. And the ones that survived were sort of the standalone ones like Spawn, um, some of the, I guess, um, some of the standalone stories that are still around now, as the basis of Image, but definitely these Wildstorm pieces kind of fell off, and then of course got integrated by DC when Jim sold the company, kind of sold out that whole era and said, DC, I'm going to sell it to you. You guys will own it. Let me go back to just working on comic books. I'm tired of this business management type role. But he's doing a great job now. It's not his company anymore. It's kind of, I think he learned a lot being a CEO, and then but he kind of went back to what his passion was, and just to do comic books, and then that kind of merged at some point. He got opportunities to help DC sell a lot of books, and then kind of got into a position of creative leadership at DC, and now he's the top guy. So, long story short, like, um, I look at this as a really good sort of learning project, because Jim, he got divorced from Marvel. Now all these guys are like forced to do their own projects. He got to do his own project, and he hit it out of the park with this. Wildcats #1 is still a great read. It still brings in all these great characters, uh, introduces them in a really compelling book. But then, you can't be a comic book creator and try to run a company at the same time. And I think that's what all of these early Image people ran in, the challenge they ran into. It's like they had to hire people, they had to hire these lackeys to do the work now. And without some vision to what these characters and stories, where they were headed, why people should be compelled to pick up an issue each week or each month. Without that, it's not going to go anywhere. And so it'd be interesting to see how, if Jim, because Jim has control, he can say, "Hey, we're doing Wildcats," and I know they've introduced Wildcats. They're part of canon now in DC. But for the most part, I think Wildcats are still largely unknown outside of a few 90s comic book nerds. They're definitely not like core characters currently. Um, but I think there's a potential for that to change, because I think, obviously this is Jim's heart right here. It's his heart and soul. It's his kind of like his, you know, first original project. Everything else he's done for like Batman, Superman, these are characters that have been established. These are really his first foray into building um, a world uh, and the characters and stories on his own. So again, all this is under the purview of uh, DC right now, and he can work to integrate them into the cinematic piece and just bring them to the. But he runs a risk of really killing these characters off if it doesn't succeed. So these kind of, it's kind of in this gray area where you don't want to bring them in too early before you establish the DCEU. But I think once the DCEU is thriving and people are on board, and what are they going to, what is the studio going to do next? You've brought Superman, you brought Batman, you brought Wonder Woman, you brought the Flash, you brought the Justice League, you brought, all right, the DCU is just like it's running on all cylinders. I think that gives you a little bit of latitude to be like, okay, here are the Wildcats now, and hopefully that happens, because I still think there's a lot of potential around this book to get a very thoughtful, very modern sort of uh, build a modern relevance to this team, because um, even though people say, oh, they're just like the X-Men, they're not the X-Men. They are not the X-Men. They're very, very different from the X-Men. Um, and you can do a lot with. I think there's a thoughtful way to make this content relevant again. Because in the '90s it was really exciting, um, but then it didn't really have legs to stand on as time went on, and that was partly because Jim was just stretched, right? He couldn't really give his entire focus, but he kind of had bad luck. He kind of had this like engine of ideas and revenue and interest, and then boom, it kind of just everything fell. And when revenue and interest falls, it's hard to sustain something when nobody wants to read the book anymore. Um, but yeah, um, right now it's sort of like we got Wildcats in the DC canon. It's there. Uh, how do we maybe resurrect and build something that the next generation can enjoy and generations down the road can enjoy, and really establish Wildcats, because they never really got established outside of fans like me who were part of that '90s comic boom. Never got a chance to get established, and still to this day, I think you see Wildcats. Um, they're not really major characters. Gen 13, right? Nothing really major going on there. Even though I think Gen 13 would, think it would work as like right now as a bunch of like a geriatric team, right? If they came back as like literal Gen Xers, like you can obviously, get like a hot Gen Xer in there um, to play Fairchild. Uh, get a lot of hot Gen Xers, to play those roles. Grunge, I think I would imagine might have aged, might have like a dad bod. Grunge might have a dad bod now, but those other characters obviously could keep very fit and trim 50-year-olds playing the role. But that would be a great take, an introduction to that team, and I think there's a lot of thoughtful ways to do it. But Wildcats, you'd want to keep them young and fresh, right? But I think Gen 13, um, a little homage to the Gen X generation, keep them Gen Xers and keep them consistent, because that's what they were back in the day. They were Gen Xers. Gen 13, they were, the the youthful, uh, college aged, high school college aged kids back in the '90s, and so much. They just were the poster child of youth and vitality and the uh, the future of this country, and it's not amounted to much. Gen, I don't know if Gen Xers made the world a better place or not, but hopefully we did. I'm hoping, if you're to judge a generation, I think Gen Xers were seen as a positive force in the world rather than a negative force. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. So that is my top 10 artists. Thank you for watching. Um, and we're going to continue on. So this is the first of 10 lists, as I tried to explain in the part one of this video. Go back and watch part one, but I'll do a brief explanation of what we're doing. This is the first of 10 lists. I'm going to do 9 more top 10 lists. I'm going to do 9 more top 10 lists. And so I'm making this much more difficult than it has to be, but I'm going to show off 110 books, 10 of which I've shown off now. My next list is going to be a top 20 list, and I'll just share with you what the next list is going to be. The next list we're going to do are my top 20 favorite comic book characters. Okay, and we're going to show off books of each character. So my top 20 favorite comic book characters. And so it's the only list among these top 10 lists that will feature 20 books versus 10. So the second one's going to be a top 20 list. The rest from here on out are just going to be top 10 lists. I hope that makes sense. I don't know. You're probably asking, why didn't you just make a top 10 characters list? Well, there's just too many characters I want to promote as like my favorites. It's really like 10 male characters and 10 female characters, and we're gonna mishmash them into this 20 list of males and female characters. So that's the reason it's 20 versus 10. But then moving forward, it's going to be top 10 lists. And we're going to build up to, so we kind of started off with the top 10 comic book artists, which is really the foundation of these lists I do every year. But we're going to build up to the top 10 list, which will be signature books, like top 10 signature books in the collection. That's going to be just like a flex list. This is kind of like a flex list too. That technically, this is a signed book here as well. 90s signature Jim Lee Wildcats book. Really awesome book there. But yeah, like these top 10 lists are just going to build to a crescendo, with the finale being the top 10 signature books in my collection. And so, yeah, there'll be 9 more lists. The next list will be top 20 comic book artists, and we'll continue to announce a new list each week, each time we do these lists, until we hit our 10th list, which will be, again, the top 10 signature books in my collection. So I hope you enjoy. We're going to show off a lot of books between now and year end. But yeah, we're going to do 9 more lists. I'm going to show off 100 more books. So stay tuned. And don't forget to tune in to Double Dragons tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. Jeff and I are going to do an old-fashioned, bloody, sexy comic battle. It's going to be Vampirella versus Psylocke. So what we want you to do is we want you to come in the live stream if you can and vote. But if we don't have enough, we at least need 5 people in the chat, 5 voters, right? At least 5 people in the chat to establish a winner for each round. But we're gonna have 5 rounds, 5 covers each, where we show off Van B versus Psylocke books, and the chat's gonna decide the winner. Now, if we don't have enough people in the chat, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give a time frame, a week's time frame, for you to vote in the comments. That's in the instance we don't have enough people in the chat. If we have at least 5 people in the chat, we're gonna decide the winner right there and then. But if we have like just a few stragglers coming in and out, like 1 or 2 people, we'll log your vote, but we won't finish tabulating the vote until the end of the week, the next week. And then we'll announce who actually won each round and the winner of the battle. So if you're watching this right now, just take some time to join us tomorrow night for the stream. The battle shouldn't take more than 10-15 minutes. We'll try to do it in the very beginning. So just come in and vote while we do the battle live. But if you're catching it maybe on the rewind, and again, we don't have the threshold of 5 live stream commenters, then we'll open it up to comments throughout the week, and you can vote in the comments, and then whoever has the most. Hey, what's up, fanboy? How you doing, man? Hopefully you can join tomorrow night. Again, we're gonna have the old-fashioned cover battle. Jeff and I are doing Vampirella versus Psylocke, which is really like Team Red versus Team Blue. Classic versus modern. You can kind of tier them up. Or maybe it's just a popular contest, Jeff versus me, however you want to look at it. We're going to do a cover battle and give people, what's up? Yeah, I heard you're not going on tomorrow because of work. Yeah. All right, man. Hopefully you'll be on next week. Hopefully this isn't like a permanent change, but either way, I'm going to try to catch you whenever you go on. Have a good shift, man. But yeah, if you can, try to join us tomorrow. Vote. This is a holiday thing. Gotcha. Yeah. I know. Holidays are tough for retail, because it's just like you gotta work, right? You gotta work when other people are taking their times off. So hopefully you guys reserve time to celebrate in your own way, with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. So yeah, take care, man. But yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna be on again tomorrow night with Jeff. We're gonna do an old-fashioned cover battle, Vampirella versus Psylocke. Come in, vote. Again, we're gonna figure out the rules tomorrow. See what are all the people that join tomorrow, and we'll go from there. But I'm gonna bring some fire. I'm gonna bring some fire, and my intent is to really. I know Jeff's got a lot of great Bambi covers. It's gonna be a battle for sure, because I'm going up against the likes of Frazetta, right? I'm going against the likes of like the Joe Juscos, the I think Gonzalez, Jose Gonzalez or whatever. I forget the artist's name, but a lot of great artists on the Vampy, uh, the title, like classic, like artists, right? Um, and there's not a lot of like classic artists that have worked on Psylocke. It's mostly modern takes. So I've got definitely got my work cut out for me. Like I think going in, Jeff has the advantage. Jeff can literally like just look at his collection and be like, yeah, these are gonna win me in each round and just pick five absolutely out astounding Vampirella visuals. It's gonna be tough to beat. I think Vampirella is like if you look at her character, the way she's kind of designed to look, she's the she's sort of the benchmark for Psylocke in a lot of ways, right? Um, Dark haired, sort of exotic, foreign type essence about her, right? Very sexy, right? And very kind of effeminate, but kind of strong as well. So yeah, I think you kind of like see a character like Vampirella um, kind of evolve and influence characters over the years that lead to an ideation of Psylocke as well. So I think there's a lot of similarities between the two characters, but ultimately it will be old school versus new school, Jeff versus me, Vampy versus Psylocke, red versus blue, blood versus sexy, those kinds of like, dynamics at work. And so put your vote in. A lot of booty for sure. A lot of booty, a lot of body parts just kind of exposed. A lot of skin, right? Um, a lot of you know, a lot of kind of subtle intimation, sex, violence, blood, guts, gore, everything. It's going to be horror versus mutant. Um, Mutant assassins. It's just going to be a good time. So hop on tomorrow if you can. I'm just glad I have power now. The power's back on. No outage throughout this whole stream, even though we got cut off there between part one and part two. Hopefully, catch both parts and just you know tie in the pieces. But tomorrow, fingers crossed, hoping there's no power outage during tomorrow's cover battle. I would claim defeat if I were to just as I'm presenting my books. If I were to the power to cut out, and Jeff was sitting there holding his books with me being dropped off the signal, that would be a horrible way to lose that battle. But hopefully, power will remain on from here on out, and we'll go from there. But yeah, thanks for joining me on this, annual sort of list that we do. The top 10 favorite artists. It kind of changes a little bit every year. The books change a little bit every year, but um, overall, the essence of the people I love to collect, the artists and the books I love to look at and collect, will they don't change all that much, but yeah, changes here and there. We'll see what the list looks like next year. I'm very influenceable. Is that a word? Um, yeah, I'm very what's the word I'm looking for? Very impressionable is kind of the word. Very impressionable to changing what I'm focused on or like. But um, yeah, this is the updated top 10 favorite artist list. Thanks for watching, guys. Tomorrow, we'll see you tomorrow. All right. Peace out.